It's been a minute and we just put out a new song.
Where are you, Christmas? Why can't I find you?
Why have you gone away?
It definitely has some power to it.
25 years, a quarter of a century. In Hollywood, that's an eternity. It's long enough for empires to rise and fall, for stars to be born and fade away into obscurity. So, when a photograph surfaced showing Jim Carrey and Taylor Momsen reunited after 2.5 decades, the world took notice. On the surface, it was a nostalgic throwback, the mischievous Grinch and the adorable Cindy Lou Who, all grown up. But this was no simple reunion. This was the collision of two worlds. Two souls who had walked through the darkest valleys of fame and emerged, scarred but not broken. The smiling picture doesn't tell the real story. It doesn't show the years of silent struggle, the public breakdowns, the private tragedies, and the shocking accusations that nearly destroyed them both. To understand what's really behind those smiles, you have to go back to the beginning, to a film set that would change their lives forever, setting them on two dramatically different and equally perilous paths. When Ron Howard's How the Grinch Stole Christmas began production, it was destined to be a blockbuster, but for its star, Jim Carrey, it was a living nightmare. The process of transforming into the Grinch was a form of daily torture. It took over 8 hours to apply the suffocating latex skin and yak hair suit. Carrey felt like he was being buried alive, and on the very first day, he nearly quit, telling the director he couldn't go through with it. The studio had to hire a CIA operative who trained agents to endure torture just to coach Carrey on how to withstand the agonizing process. He learned to eat, breathe, and exist inside this green prison. While he was being mentally waterboarded by his costume, 7-year-old Taylor Momsen was navigating her own surreal world. She was a child on a billion-dollar movie set, a place of overwhelming scale and pressure. She later recalled the experience as isolating, a little girl trying to find her place among a sea of adults. This early immersion into the Hollywood machine planted a seed of rebellion in her, a deep-seated desire to break free from the very industry that was making her a star. Long before the fame and the fortune, Jim Carrey's life was defined by desperation. His family, once comfortably middle class, had fallen on brutally hard times. They lost their home and were forced to live out of a VW camper van, roaming from one campsite to another. At just 15, Carrey dropped out of school and took a job as a janitor, working overnight shifts with his father to help the family survive. The crushing poverty took its toll. His mother suffered from chronic illness and depression, and Carrey, in a desperate attempt to lift her spirits, began performing. He would contort his face and throw himself against walls, doing anything to make her laugh. Comedy wasn't a dream, it was a survival mechanism. This burning need to perform, to please, to mask the pain with laughter, was forged in the fires of his family's suffering. It would make him one of the biggest stars in the world. But it would also create a chasm between the man on screen and the man suffering in silence. As Carrey's star ascended into the stratosphere, his inner world began to crumble. He was the king of comedy, the first actor to command a $20 million paycheck, yet he was privately battling a darkness that no amount of success could illuminate. He spoke candidly about his struggles with depression, describing it as a constant looming presence. He sought solace in spirituality and eventually gave up alcohol and other substances, but the demons remained. Then, in 2015, his life was irrevocably shattered. His former girlfriend, Cathriona White, was found dead from an intentional overdose. The note she left behind was gut-wrenching, and it was addressed to him. The tragedy was devastating, but it was only the beginning of the nightmare. White's estranged husband and her mother filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Carrey, and the accusations that surfaced were horrifying. They painted a portrait of a man who was not a beloved comedian, but a manipulative monster. The public who had adored him was now forced to wonder if they had ever known him at all. While Carrey's life was becoming a public spectacle of grief and accusation, Taylor Momsen was engineering her own great escape. She had become a household name playing Jenny Humphrey on the cultural phenomenon Gossip Girl. But as the seasons wore on, she felt increasingly trapped. She was an actress playing a part, but her true passion was music. She had formed her band, The Pretty Reckless, and the pull of the rock and roll lifestyle was becoming impossible to ignore. The show's producers grew tired of her increasingly erratic behavior and her goth appearance, which clashed with the polished world of the Upper East Side. The tension finally reached a breaking point. Momsen, at the height of her television fame, walked away. She quit acting cold turkey, turning her back on a multi-million-dollar career to tour the world in a van with her band. It was a shocking move, one that the industry saw as career suicide. But for Momsen, it was the only way to save her soul. The world was not prepared for Taylor Momsen's transformation. The sweet girl from The Grinch and the stylish prep schooler from Gossip Girl was gone. In her place was a rock and roll phoenix clad in leather, lace, and a permanent scowl. She was deliberately provocative, embracing a hypersexualized image on her own terms, a stark rebellion against the sanitized image Hollywood had tried to force on her. The media had a field day, labeling her a train wreck and a wannabe. They criticized her skimpy outfits and her heavy, raccoon-like eyeliner. But Momsen was unbothered. This wasn't a costume, it was her armor. She was channeling the frustrations of her youth into a raw, aggressive sound that was undeniably authentic. She was no longer a puppet on a string. She was the one holding the microphone, and she had a lot to say. The world could either listen or get out of the way. As Momsen was screaming her truth into a microphone, Jim Carrey was seeking solace in silence. The lawsuit had taken its toll. The constant media scrutiny and the horrific nature of the accusations drove him into a self-imposed exile. He stepped away from acting, away from the public eye, and found refuge in a place no one expected: a canvas. He began to paint, and it consumed him. His home became a sprawling art studio, every wall and surface covered in his vibrant, chaotic creations. He documented this period in a short film called I Needed Color, where he revealed that painting was his way of healing a broken heart. His art was a raw, unfiltered look into his psyche, a whirlwind of color and emotion that expressed the pain, the anger, and the hope that he could no longer articulate with words. For a man who had made a fortune by pretending to be other people, art became the only way to be himself. Taylor Momsen had finally found her footing. The Pretty Reckless was gaining critical acclaim, and they were touring with their heroes. Then, in 2017, tragedy struck with the force of a lightning bolt. They were on tour opening for Soundgarden when, after a show in Detroit, Chris Cornell took his own life. Cornell wasn't just a rock legend to Momsen, he was the reason she had picked up a guitar in the first place. The loss was profound and sent her into a tailspin of grief and depression. Before she could even begin to process it, fate delivered another cruel blow. Just under a year later, her longtime producer and closest collaborator, Kato Kanwala, who she called her fifth band member, was killed in a horrific motorcycle accident. The back-to-back losses were more than she could bear. The music died. She fell into a black hole of substance abuse and depression, canceling tours and shutting herself off from the world. She later admitted she was done, that she didn't see a way forward. After years of quiet reflection and artistic immersion, Jim Carrey decided it was time to re-engage with the world. But the man who returned was not the one anyone remembered. He began appearing at events, but his interviews were bizarre, almost Dadaist performances. At a New York Fashion Week party, he famously told a reporter, "There is no me. There's just things happening. This is not our world. We don't matter." The clip went viral, sparking a deluge of memes and articles questioning his sanity. Was this a profound spiritual awakening, or was it a mental breakdown playing out in real time? He also took to Twitter not to tell jokes, but to share his politically charged and often grotesque caricatures of political figures. His feed became a battlefield of praise and condemnation. The goofy, lovable comedian was gone, replaced by a polarizing and unpredictable artist who seemed determined to challenge every expectation the world had of him. From the ashes of her grief, Taylor Momsen found a flicker of inspiration. She picked up a pen and began to write. The result was the band's fourth album, a raw and powerful chronicle of her journey through the abyss, fittingly titled Death by Rock and Roll. The album was not just a collection of songs, it was a testament to survival. The title track was a tribute to Kato Kandwala, built around a recording of his footsteps. The music was heavier, the lyrics darker and more introspective than anything she had written before. It was a primal scream of pain, a defiant roar of resilience. The album was a massive success, debuting at #1 on the rock charts. It was a profound and triumphant return, silencing the critics who had written her off. She had stared into the void, and instead of letting it consume her, she had turned it into her masterpiece. Taylor Momsen's story is a harrowing chapter in the cautionary tale of child stardom. She was a commodity before she was a person, her childhood spent on film sets and in audition rooms. The industry tried to shape her, to mold her into a marketable product. but her spirit was too fierce to be contained. Her rebellion, which the media painted as the tantrums of a spoiled brat, was a desperate fight for identity. She is one of the lucky ones who managed to break free and forge her own path, but so many others are not so fortunate. Her journey is a damning indictment of a system that often chews up and spits out its youngest and most vulnerable, leaving a trail of broken lives in its wake. She didn't just survive Hollywood, she survived her own childhood. The legal battle that engulfed Jim Carrey was a brutal, drawn-out affair that laid bare the most intimate details of his life. The lawsuit alleged that he had used a fake name to acquire powerful prescription medications for Cathriona White, despite knowing she was prone to depression and had previously attempted to take her own life. Damning text messages were released to the public, appearing to show arguments about STDs and emotional manipulation. Carrey's legal team fired back, claiming that White had doctored the medical records and that her family was engaged in a shameless cash grab, exploiting her death for financial gain. For years, the case dragged on, a public and humiliating spectacle. In 2018, the lawsuit was suddenly dismissed. The details were kept private, but for Carrey, the damage was already done. He had been through a public trial by media, and the shadow of the accusations would linger over his legacy forever. Through years of turmoil, public scrutiny, and personal tragedy, Taylor Momsen has emerged as a figure of uncompromising authenticity. She has weathered the storms of industry backlash and personal loss, and she has done so without ever betraying her own artistic vision. Her journey from a child actress to a celebrated rock musician is a masterclass in resilience. She has turned her pain into power, her trauma into art. She is a survivor, a fighter, and a testament to the importance of staying true to oneself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else. She is no longer defined by her past, by Cindy Lou Who or Jenny Humphrey. She is the frontwoman of the Pretty Reckless, an artist in full command of her craft and her narrative, and so we return to that reunion 25 years in the making. When Jim Carrey and Taylor Momsen posed for that photo, it was a moment heavy with unspoken history. Here were two artists who had been to hell and back. They both knew the crushing weight of public expectation, the searing pain of having your private life dissected for public consumption. They had both battled depression in the unforgiving glare of the spotlight. They had both used their art, whether painting or music, as a lifeline to pull them back from the brink. Perhaps in that brief moment, they saw a reflection of their own survival in each other's eyes, a shared understanding of the high price of fame and the strength it takes to endure. What lies ahead for these two survivors? Jim Carrey continues to walk his own enigmatic path, sometimes returning to Hollywood for a role, but always seeming to keep one foot in his own world of art and spiritual inquiry. Taylor Momsen, now a respected veteran of the rock scene, continues to tour the world, her voice a powerful instrument of her hard-won freedom. Their lives, once briefly intertwined on a whimsical movie set, have taken them on journeys more dramatic and challenging than any film script could ever capture. Their story is a stark and powerful reminder that the brightest stars often cast the darkest shadows, and that true strength isn't about never falling, it's about how you get back up.